Hello, Shoyan here. Last time I installed the Hinoki cypress walls. Today I'm building a TV stand and a 3-shelf storage unit using some wood with knots in it. Today I'm building a TV stand and a storage shelf. Making a regular storage shelf and TV stand might not be that exciting, so I decided to use some unusual wood to make it more interesting.
これ立てるんなんかここにも欲しい感じする
ここか
めっちゃ引っ掛けるやろうがほんま
ここやろここ立てるね
ほらもう引っかかったんやんけ
About a year ago, I made a floor table out of Kiso Hinoki cypress. At that time, I bought enough wood for a staircase. I've got some live edge planks left over, so I'll be using those for the storage shelf and TV stand. When I first bought the Kiso cypress planks, they were intended for a staircase. I'd heard it was trendy to use wide live edge boards as stringers and 27 centimeter wide boards as treads to create a mountain lodge style staircase. I figured it wouldn't hurt to have a set, so I bought roughly enough for the staircase. I made a low table, but there wasn't much else to use the wood for, so I had some leftovers. Kiso cypress is really something special. When you plane it, it shines, and even large knots smooth out beautifully. The wood's tight growth rings are also a hallmark. Kiso town, where this cypress comes from, is deep in the mountains of Nagano Prefecture. The cold climate there makes the trees grow slowly, resulting in tighter growth rings, which increases the wood's value. The board I'm working on now has around 200 rings. While low-quality wood is not valuable, slow-growing wood is actually valuable. Kiso cypress and Yakushima cedar are prime examples of this. That's why Kiso cypress is considered the best cypress wood in Japan. First, I'll plane all the planks. If the wood warps and becomes difficult to plane, it'll be a hassle, so I'm finishing them early with a hand plane. I thought wood grown in cold regions would be hard, but Kiso cypress is totally different from our local Hinoki or Yoshino cypress. It's resilient, and while the knots are hard, the plane still cuts through smoothly. With our local Hinoki cypress, even a slightly raised hand plane blade gets caught, but Kiso cypress planes so smoothly that it amazes me. Until last year, I had never used Kiso cypress, but once I did, I couldn't forget how well my tools worked with it. It seems that planks with knots and live edges like these are traded at a reasonable price. First, I'll build the storage shelf. I'll stand two 27 centimeter wide boards on each side, notch them, and join 3 live edge shelves. The sides will be the only vertical pieces. I initially planned to install the shelves directly in this space, but that wasn't ideal. I would need to first install the shelves and then fit the wall boards between them, which would be complicated. So I decided to install the walls first, then add the shelves afterward. I notched the vertical boards on both sides to join the shelves. The wood is full of knots, so no matter how I tried, the 3 shelves ended up with knots in them. I was concerned about having to notch into the knots, but since the planks were barely long enough, I couldn't adjust them. Fortunately, the wood was easy to cut, so it went better than I expected. Even though Chisel cypress knots are soft, they're still knots, and I'm hesitant to chisel them off. So I used a small chisel, which makes it easier to repair any chips. If the chisel is wide, chips are really challenging to fix. To minimize damage, I'll make a few cuts with a handsaw and then notch with a narrow chisel. Now, I secure the vertical frame. I secure it from the notch I made for the shelves with screws. Since screws would be visible on the top and bottom, I add a bit of glue and use a tension rod to attach them to the wall boards instead. Next, I'll install the shelves. It's difficult to attach them perfectly. Since the plank is wide, the corner hits the area, scratching the hinoki cypress board. So I leave a little extra length. Also, the length and depth of each notch vary slightly, so I measure and cut each plank to make them uniform. I leave the live edge on the back so the shelves won't fit snugly against the wall. Leaving a small gap between the wall and the back edge creates more depth and space. I think this will be convenient for placing items or running electrical cords along the recessed area at the back. When using a live edge plank like this, it's generally better not to work on the edges as the color becomes whitish. It's best if the inner bark remains, which would be yellowish, but since the outer bark was still there, I had to remove it. If the outer bark is cleanly removed during milling, it saves work and there's no need to finish the edge like this. The 3 shelves won't be secured in place. I won't use any glue or screws, I will just join them. Over time, as the wood twists, the shelf and notch will tighten snugly, securing the shelves in place. Also, if we ever convert this space into something else in the future, it may be easier to remove the shelves. That's why I'm not using glue or screws. At this stage, I'll install the crown molding and baseboard. Next, I'll move on to building the TV stand. This TV stand will be set at a slight angle. Previously, the TV stand was placed on the right side parallel to the front. Since we're going to place a couch close to the engawa, I'll angle the TV stand about 30 degrees. The TV is thin, but the position of the legs determines where the TV sits, so it's tricky to get the adjustment just right. Now that the angle and position of the TV stand are set, I'll place the TV stand's top board on the lowest shelf. I originally planned to use a horizontal mortise and tenon, but since that seemed a bit difficult, I decided to use a butt joint instead. I ended up compromising a little. I slightly notched the bottom shelf, traced over the curve of the TV stand's top board, and joined them from the side. Getting the measurements right is challenging, but they should join more neatly with a butt joint. When cutting the TV stand at an angle, I cut it slightly longer by about 1.5 centimeters and used that offcut to trace the curve. It won't fit perfectly if I don't measure at the actual place using the offcut as a guide. The top of the live edge plank is naturally rounded, so the top is slightly narrower than the bottom. This allows the stand to be joined by lifting it up from below. Since it won't stay in place with just a butt joint, I'll screw it in from the back. The bottom isn't visible, so I'll deeply notch the TV stand for screws. Before installing the TV stand, I'll cut the posts that will hold it up. These will also have a butt joint at both the top and bottom. Here's how I do it. I first cut a piece of drawing paper at a right angle, align it neatly with the end of the wood, and tape it. By tracing and cutting along that line, you can cut the log parallel on both the top and bottom. There's no need to mark the center line and rotate the piece while cutting. Especially when cutting short pieces that need to stand upright, using thick paper, such as drawing paper, helps create a parallel cut. Now I can finally install the TV stand. I glue the part where the top board meets the shelf. I won't secure the TV stand to the wall, it'll simply sit on the posts. The notches have a wider bottom, so I join the TV stand to the bottom shelf from below. Then, I'll firmly screw it from the bottom. I want to keep the screws as level as possible when securing, but it's difficult to screw into a small pilot hole. By making the pilot hole slightly deeper, the screws pull the boards closer and snugly together. For the front posts, I'll just screw each one to the top board and the floor, using one screw each. This ensures the TV stand is firmly secured in place. Now the storage shelves and TV stand are complete. Next, I'll replace the kamidana with a new one. There's no standard thickness for a kamidana, but it should be thick enough to avoid warping. The problem is the width. It needs to be at least 360 millimeters wide to accommodate the shrine building and other decorations at the front. So when using a single board, you need to find one that's at least 360 millimeters wide. The end of the board will attach to the hinoki cypress wall at the back. The most challenging part of the kamidana is the support. Some people place it at the front of the kamidana, but I'm placing it on the side this time. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but I prefer to place it on the side using the end of the shelf as much as possible. If there are two supports, placing them at the front looks nice. When using just one support, I typically notch the kamidana to match the size of the support. But this time, I add a bit of decoration before installing it. The kamidana is often used as a place to store lottery tickets, but it shouldn't be used just for that. One example is the onigawara on the second floor roof. It faces slightly downward so it can watch over the property. Regarding the kamidana, the deity enshrined, there is said to watch over the household's safety and health. Both the guardian demon and the deity are watching over the house. That's the traditional belief in Japan. So we shouldn't just store lottery tickets, but bow properly. Now, I finished building the kamidana. Lastly, as a bonus, I'm making a hat rack. I had a leftover branched log piece from a project a few years ago, so I'll use that. It's not very discolored. I'll leave only the side with branches and cut it into a half-round shape. I believe it will serve as a hat rack if attached to the wall. Since it can't be cut with a circular saw, I plane it with an electric planer until it's half round. It won't be a perfect half-round shape just by planing 5 to 10 times. I plane it a few dozen times to get it just right.
シンプルにこれは引っかかるしな。使えんやんどの道。
危ないなこれな。
絶対当たる。
Now, I'll install the hat rack. I only have the option to screw it in from the front. The offcut I just made has 2 branches. Since I'm going to fill the pilot hole with that, I'll use a drill bit that matches the size of the branches and screw from that hole. If I tap and fill the holes with branches, it's not exactly the same as if the branches were naturally growing, but they'll still look like branches and be secured by the screws. I think this approach serves 2 purposes and feels like the only option that makes sense.
触っても大丈夫か。
I sand the corner to finish it. I think this rack can hold hearts and many other items. I don't think anyone would ever bump their forehead on this branch. The TV stand and storage shelf are now complete. I used both knotless and knotty hinoki cypress planks to build them. I also installed a hat rack and a new kamidana. I think they turned out to be unique shelves. With that, the job is finally done. It's a bit embarrassing that the carpentry work was the last part, but since it's my own house, I guess it can't be helped. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.